Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Ocean Beach, California, Tuesday, June 6, 2023. Hollywood and TV shows have romanticized the Hells Angels as being a bunch of rough outlaws as opposed to the grimy, murderous white supremacists they actually are. It needs to be remembered that is what they are first and foremost, a white supremacist organization. They carried out one of their usual attacks on Ocean Beach's main drag, Newport Avenue. There were 3 black men at the time, ages 19, 20, and 21, who were in the area when they were jumped on by 17 members of this white supremacist gang in San Diego's Ocean Beach neighborhood. Their assailants hurled a torrent of racial epithets and made sure to tell them that they didn't belong there. 2 of the victims of this 17-person attack managed to get away, but the 3rd man was punched, kicked, and knocked unconscious. While this 3rd victim was lying on the ground unconscious, the white supremacist Hells Angels continued to beat him, and then one of their members took out a knife and stabbed the man in the chest. This individual was spirited away from the crime scene by the other gang members and taken to one of their clubhouses. The stabbing victim suffered a fractured sternum from the knife wound as well as a pierced lung and severed artery, nearly causing the man to bleed out. Despite this blatant and heinous race attack with 18 individuals involved, it would still be another 3 months before the authorities managed to make any arrests.
3 months after the crime, officials have arrested and indicted 17 members on allegations including assault, hate crimes, accessory after the fact, and 1 charge of attempted murder against this man, 43-year-old Troy Shoulder, accused of stabbing one of the victims in the chest. Authorities say he's a decades-long Hells Angels member. He was in court Monday facing 39 years to life behind bars.
If we could please enter not guilty pleas to any and all allegations.
The white supremacist who committed the stabbing would eventually be identified as 43-year-old Troy Anthony Shoulder, who was described as a longtime Hells Angel leader. He had been a part of the racist gang since 2003 and has a number of white supremacist tattoos. Shoulder would be charged with attempted murder, assault, among other offenses. 3 of the defendants were charged with being an accessory after the fact by aiding him. At the time, he was facing charges of 39 years to life if he was convicted. There were so many of these degenerates involved in this racist attack that it took 2 pages of the criminal complaint for the prosecutors to list them all. And you had a number of different names, including white Hispanics who were involved in this vile attack. One of these criminals, by the way, is in the U.S. Navy.
Among the members in the courtroom was 29-year-old Michael Peters in Navy uniform. He pleaded not guilty to charges of assault in association with the gang.
And he even had the gall to show up to court wearing his Navy uniform, so he wanted to make it clear to the judge he expected special treatment on top of his white privilege. Speaking of white privilege, this white supremacist terrorist group tried the Old Faithful, claiming that they only attacked and tried to kill these black men for honorable purposes. In this case, they tried to claim that one of their victims had been talking to one of the gang members' girlfriends. Now, this is a lie. Imagine that. Racist criminal biker outlaws, as they like to call themselves, lying. This is them trying the old, that nigger was making moves on a white woman, so we had to protect her, and even if they weren't, well, we need everyone to get on code so we can get our necks out of the noose. That's what this was really about. And you won't be surprised to learn that this wasn't Troy Shoulder's first brush with the law, and it wasn't even his first hate crime. In 2003, Shoulder started a fight with a black man at a Pacific Beach bar after the victim asked Shoulder to stop smoking a cigarette next to him. When police came to arrest Shoulder, he called the victim the N-word multiple times, said he knows people who would hang them from trees, and told one of the arresting officers to remember the fatherland. For this violent attack, Shoulder's white privilege got him a misdemeanor, which is what prosecutors always do when someone from the dominant society is charged with an offense. No matter how serious it is, they always bend over backwards and just ignore the law altogether and say, well, whatever it is, it's going to be a misdemeanor. So this guy has a track record of starting violent confrontations with black people, and there was no white woman involved in this case, so we can dismiss any asinine claims that their 2023 attack was about a woman. But that's not all. In 2014, Shoulder was arrested in Canada after he had crossed the border without identification and was hiding out there. It was his gang tattoos that gave him away. In this case, he was hiding out in Canada because he had been a fugitive for 3 years. And why was that? Because of a brutal gang assault that he and 3 other thugs had committed in 2007. In that crime, Shoulder and 3 other Hells Angels gang members kidnapped, tortured, assaulted, and robbed a fellow gang member because he wanted out. A week before the attack, the victim had gotten into a fistfight with the president of the San Diego Hells Angels chapter. Then, on April 6, 2007, the victim told the club at the gang's weekly meeting that they called church that he wanted to leave the club. The gang members voted that the victim would depart in bad standing rather than good standing. The victim was then beaten and forced to sit still while the gang tattooed over all of his Hells Angels tattoos. The victim was thrown into a pickup truck and driven to a friend's house where he was forced to sign over the title of his motorcycle to the club. He was then driven to his Bay Park apartment to surrender all of his Hells Angels paraphernalia, as well as a 42-inch flat-screen TV. His 1999 Harley-Davidson motorcycle, which was at a shop getting repaired, was later turned over to an unknown person. Another Hells Angel was found in possession of the motorcycle in 2008. He claimed that he had bought it from the victim. And as for the victim, he had been beaten with a baseball bat as well as assaulted by other gang members. One of the alleged assailants, Hells Angel Kurtith Nielsen, was angry because his ex-girlfriend was sending sexually explicit text messages to the victim. The victim would be taken to a hospital and treated for facial fractures. So there we have the intersection of white supremacist violence and a woman, except in this case, the story is that the white woman was sending explicit text messages to the victim. So anyone still want to take the racist biker's word for it when they claim that they were just trying to protect some white woman's honor? We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. And that's why this punk was hiding out in Canada, a fugitive for 3 years, wanted on a slew of felony charges and picked up in a foreign country. Well, I think we can all guess what became of those charges. According to the San Diego District Attorney's website, Shoulder was sentenced to only 1 year in jail with 13 years in prison stayed. Reminds you of what happened with Ethan Couch, so-called affluenza teen, after he killed 4 people with his pickup truck. He then fled the country while on parole and was brought back only to get a slap on the wrist sentence. Now, as for Shoulder, he was back on the streets after multiple violent offenses, a number of which were predictably reduced from felonies to misdemeanors like all the others. This is not the system failing, family. This is the system working exactly the way it's intended. Now, as for this race attack that the Hells Angels carried out in 2023, the other assailants were offered bail immediately. This was an attempted murder that took place, so the all-in laws should have attached. After all, the Hells Angels are a gang. It doesn't matter which one of them actually committed the stabbing. They were all involved in the attack, so they're all equally guilty, right? Well, they would be if they had been black. But we understand these laws were written to be applied to black citizens. And although all the defendants have been ordered not to have any contact with other Hells Angels members charged in the case, Deputy District Attorney Miriam Hemming told the court that she had witnessed several of the men violating that order in the court hallway. Hemming said 2 other defendants had tested positive for methamphetamine since their arrests. The judge set hearings to review those test cases and told the defendants their bail could be revoked if they continued to use drugs. Yeah, see, that's what happens. You can go ahead and violate court orders in the courtroom. You can go ahead and do drugs. And as long as you happen to be the right skin color, the court will just say, well, you better not do it again.
Today, a judge sentenced a leader of the Hells Angels biker gang to 14 years to life for assaulting 3 black men. And he added 7 years for related hate crimes.
21 years to life. That's a far cry from the original 39 years that he was originally looking at. Just goes to show these judges are giving what amounts to acquittals from the bench, and they're doing so deliberately. That sentence, though, is actually double what he would have gotten because he had a second strike stemming from the 2007 assault and theft that he had committed. So, he attacks a black man in 2003, that's a misdemeanor. He attacks a white man, that was a felony. 13 of his white supremacist collaborators pleaded guilty to various charges and have been sentenced to state prison, county jail, or probation terms. But since they have racial immunity from law, we can safely assume most of them got probation, just like Shoulder had before he got caught trying to murder someone. This incident is yet another in an endless string of examples of why we need a hate crime law specifically to protect black Americans. This animal was allowed to engage in a number of violent anti-black crimes before he was finally punished. But the Hells Angels themselves are a white supremacist gang, no different than the KKK. Their anti-black hate crimes are not some occasional accident. This is what their gang does.
The Hells Angels are well known to have a despicable streak of racism, especially against black people, exemplified by what happened in Ocean Beach earlier this summer.
The Hells Angels are not just a disease inside the U.S. either. They have chapters, or rather terrorist cells, in different countries too. And these are not Americans, by the way. These are foreigners who are mobbed up with this white supremacist terror gang. This is a far cry from how Hollywood and TV shows portray these degenerates now, isn't it? Movies like Easy Rider show these bikers as just being basically the last outlaws. TV shows like Sons of Anarchy try to glamorize these reprobates, and there's a reason for that. The thing to remember is the Hells Angels started in California, and these white producers and writers in Hollywood, they fantasize nonstop about being these creeps, the same way they fantasize about the serial killers and mass murderers that they show in so many of their TV shows and movies. And then you wonder why so many of these guys turn out like Harvey Weinstein. For these white media types, these gang members, that's the kind of power fantasy they love. This is what the people who make the so-called entertainment you watch dream about being and doing. And that comes complete with their violent anti-black racism. That's something else that these Hollywood types also love. That's why virtually all the white media TV shows and movies have some kind of slick shots that they take at the black community. This is just one of the million reasons that I don't watch TV shows or movies. I simply cannot separate the content from the perverted mentality behind it. The white media ignores their criminality, but reality always has the last word. The media can try to sanitize their violence all at once, but at the end of the day, you can't make a dog anything else than a dog. These are not some kind of rough-around-the-edges folk heroes. This is a white supremacist street gang, full stop. And they got members in the military and no doubt in law enforcement as well. These guys are a terrorist organization. But of course, in this color-coded injustice system, because of their skin color, that's not going to matter at all. But it better matter to you. Any depiction or description of these scumbags that doesn't point out their anti-black racism is a lie. These punks are nobody's angels. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Sabrina Scott, Jesse Gibson, Isaac, Kevin Bryant, and Craig Simmons. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.